We are live today with Eric Hoover. He is the Director of SEO at Jellyfish. We are so excited to welcome him onto the SEO Leadership webinar this weekend. And Eric has been on, has had some incredible experience. He has 16 plus years of SEO experience, and he has mainly worked with their content strategy and AI for global brands. A quick, brief backstory on Eric's history is that he was an SEO director, well, currently at Jellyfish, then went on to he was previously an SEO director at Hoover Media Group as well, an associate SEO director at Resolution Media, an SEO analyst at Razorfish, and previously an SEO analyst and copywriter at dealer.com, writing blogs that were averaging 50,000 unique monthly visits. So that was such an awesome experience and a gathered experience from Eric. So we are so excited to have you on to chat about that today. So Eric, thank you for taking the time to come over and chat to us at SEO for Hire. How are you keeping today?
Good. Thanks for that intro. Like you said, I've been doing this a long time, and if you name a holding company, I've probably worked for them. I'd like to note that I have mostly left on my own fruition and not because I've been asked to leave any of them. So,
awesome. But yeah, Eric, if you could just tell us a little bit about how you, I guess, got into SEO and sort of progressed from moving from an analyst and a copywriter up to a head of SEO, and just take us through a little bit of that progression and what brought you through to Jellyfish.
Yeah, so I kind of got into SEO by accident. I had been writing for a website a friend of mine and I ran years. This is back in 2005, 6. We ran a website called Equal Music. It no longer exists, but we would do like band and performance artist interviews and album reviews. And then one day, I graduated college, I had a degree in journalism. I interviewed for a role at dealer.com, which does car dealership websites. I think they back then they used to do primarily Chrysler, Subaru. They had partnerships with those. And I remember going into the interview and saying, with the person interviewing me, I was like, oh, I don't really know much about cars. I could change my tire and I can change the oil. And he laughed and he's like, you don't need to know anything about cars to do SEO. And that's when I kind of learned about, keyword research and writing content. Back then it was all about, long form content, keyword stuffed content, long tail keywords, especially. But, from there, I just kind of made my way up. I worked with someone there who eventually went to Razorfish, and they helped me get hired at Razorfish. And then I went on, again, like you said, most of the big companies. I've just worked my way up. I've worked my way throughout SEO and content, being led by great leaders, great managers who were like mentors to me. And then, me currently at Jellyfish leading SEO for some of our big global brands, but also trying to do that same sort of like paying it back, where I'm trying to kind of lead teams and help them grow and try to mentor them as much as the hours in the week will allow. But that's kind of how I joke and I say, people keep paying me to do this, so I might as well keep doing it. But I do really enjoy it too, so that's helpful.
Awesome. And then I believe you've been at Jellyfish for the past 2 and a bit years. How was going from did the effects of lockdown and job transitioning really have an impact on your role at the moment? And how have you sort of taken on your leadership role at Jellyfish in terms of bringing on new teammates and just growing the team over at Jellyfish?
Yeah, so I think part of it, I was in a unique situation where I had remote jobs previously. My very first job, dealer.com, which I was at for almost 5 years, I started in person and I went remote for most of the time. So I'd had that kind of discipline to not only work remote myself and make sure I'm like around and doing the work and all that sort of stuff, but also checking in with other people, kind of leading virtually. And I've had other jobs like contract and freelance gigs over the years where there's people I've worked with that I've never met in person. And I think that's something that's become more common in this digital age, and especially in like content and SEO. But I was able to kind of take that experience and it helped me with the role at Jellyfish. We have a pretty decent, I'm based in New York. We have a pretty decent New York office and and capacity now. But when I started, yeah, it was still, 2021, 2022, like we were still in that pandemic phase. No one had been mandated to return to office yet. Like not us, not any other companies. Like it was still in that age where we were all, virtual, and we would do just regular check-ins. We would do once or twice a week, just team kind of, check-ins where it's not so much about the work we're doing. It's about, what's going on. Everyone doing okay? How are people feeling? If there was work-related stuff they wanted to talk about, obviously bring that up. But, it's good to just have that kind of that communication, and like suggested communication, not like enforced, like, oh, you must bring something to this meeting, you must talk about something, like just kind of make it more conversational and casual. So
Awesome.
Love it. And Eric, you mentioned just before that about your sort of enterprise clients at Jellyfish. Obviously, usually like the larger the client and stuff like that, the bigger the retainer and stuff like that. Obviously recently with like SGE and AI overlooks coming into play, how did you sort of adapt to that? And was there did you take any sort of specific approach into sort of managing any sort of client nerves or anything like that?
Yeah, so we've been doing one thing that I try to do partially for myself because I just like doing it, but Jellyfish lets me do. And my previous jobs too, I was pretty big on it. I worked at iCrossing previously. They're another great agency. I would do similar kind of POV. So I would just take the first step in making sure that we were getting the message out to clients and saying, like, this is our point of view, this is what's happening, this is what we can take from it. Always kind of tying it back to some sort of guidance or recommendation that we would make. I'm getting that out there early. I had an instance years ago where like I think it was at iCrossing actually, where we were the SEO agency and the paid search agency for the brand we were working on with someone else, and they had gotten an SEO related thought piece out to them like a day or same day, but earlier in that day than we did. And I hated that. So I never want that to happen again. So I always try to make sure we're like at the forefront. It's not just me doing it. I pull my team and they help craft these POVs and add their thoughts in. We're currently working on, several for AI and some of the other SERP changes that are happening. But, making sure those people are involved as well, because just because I've been doing this for a long time doesn't mean I'm the best at it. If I was, I'd probably be doing my own thing. But, just making sure that we are getting that useful information out to the clients, not just giving them that POV, but making sure there's stuff in there that we pull from it, say this is why it's important for you, for your brands. We try to do that pretty regularly.
Brilliant. Love that. And obviously the leaks came out probably within the last sort of week or so. Is it a bit too early to sort of adapt any sort of new strategies at the minute, or are you sort of just hanging back and waiting to see what happens?
I wouldn't say we're hanging back, but I think a lot of what we have found is, it's a lot of vindication for SEOs. It's a lot of stuff that we have been saying for years and that we've been recommending to our brands. And now we can, I had one of our clients message me kind of on the side yesterday and say, you always go, do as Google does and not as they say. And it looks like you were right, because that's what I tend to say. So it's sort of helping us reinforce the work that we've been doing, and just bringing it back up and being like, it's now we know it's important to do X, Y, and Z. In order to increase your clicks, increase your CTR, because we know these are direct signals, direct importance for your site. So it's really just kind of emphasizing the work that we've already been doing, which is great. And still keeping an eye on it, because it's only, what did Google only actually admit that it was like an accurate document, or their document like a couple days ago. Like it's definitely something it's the same with AI. Like it's changed so much in the last 2 weeks. We just kind of need to be on our toes with it. But we're not making massive strategy or tactic changes yet, because honestly, a lot of it is in line with what we would recommend anyway. So.
Yeah, definitely. Love it.
I've got a bit of a spicy question just to add on to that. To any SEOs that are moving into like more of a client-facing role, like such as the head of SEO, for instance, do you have any indication for them in terms of if they are like moving into this role and managing clients now? and how they can best manage changes that come into the ballpark like this?
Yeah, I think it's first and foremost keeping, whether you're working with a client on the agency side or you're in-house, like keeping those who need to know in the know as much as possible. Like, making sure that that information is, as the expert, you should be digesting that information and pulling the relevant insights out for your team or for your client or whomever it is. Because not everyone is going to read this, what was it, 14,000 things that came out of that leak or whatever it was. Like, I don't think I've even read all of it. I've been taking insights from other SEOs. I go, look, we'll see what Lily Ray or some of the other people are saying. And then I'm like, oh, that's a good one. I'll pull that out. They're the ones that have the time and the resources to really dive in even further. So we kind of dissect from the dissection. Maybe that sounds like I'm like AI now. I'm just taking other people's work and repurposing it. So apologies to Lily Ray and anyone else on any of the other people on LinkedIn that I'm doing that from. But it's great stuff. Like, you don't need to rework the wheel. But that's really what it is keeping your clients or your teams informed, and especially informed about what's relevant for their business or for their goals. That's what I would say. And also just remember that, like, and this is something I tell my teams in general, like, people, not everyone is at the level we're at. Like, we're SEO professionals or experts. Like, we have a different level of understanding. So we need to make sure that we can translate it, for lack of a better phrase, to what, like, someone on the client side could get. Not that the client isn't smart. Our clients are super smart, but they're not SEO experts. We need to be able to help them to translate and help them understand what this means for them. And that's how you provide value for anyone. I mean, it's helpful. So
awesome. That's fantastic news. Just to move you a little bit off of the hot seat, were there any managers that you had in your previous, you mentioned earlier on in this webinar that you had some awesome managers overlooking you in your previous experiences. How has that sort of influenced your managing style now over at Jellyfish? And were there any particular traits that I guess you stood out to you and you've sort of adopted in your style?
Yeah, I think seeing, hierarchy is always dangerous. I think seeing a manager, regardless of their title, like, we're all part of a team. We're all one kind of organism. So we're different parts of that organism. And I think that is really the best thing that I've learned. The best kind of managers, leaders, whatever, that I've had over the years are people who are a part of the team. They're people who you can sit with and brainstorm and come up with ideas. And they're also, maybe they're even in or doing the grunt work. I do plenty of meta descriptions and title tags still myself and keyword research. Like, it's just part of the game, especially in SEO. But having people who are in the trenches with you, but also bringing you up to their level, having them, listen to you. Like I said before, I've been doing this a long time. That doesn't mean I'm the best at everything. So listening to those suggestions, I'm a big nerd. So I always use a Star Trek example. When they're on the bridge, the captain looks around to everyone on the bridge, like they need options. So they want to hear everyone's, suggestions on what to do about the crisis. So with SEO, it's never anything as drastic, thankfully. But that's what it is. We're all here to share our thoughts and our experiences to help kind of get this work moving for our clients, or if you're in-house, for our brand, whatever it is. But it's all about that teamwork.
Love it. Eric, just before that, you mentioned about your clients and how important it is to add value in terms of especially your SEO knowledge. Is that something that you add into, like, when you're pitching for new clients? Because we chat to a lot of people, especially who want to work with brands that you're working with, like those sort of larger enterprise clients. Mm-hmm. Is it in terms of a fact of telling them maybe not about the SEO and the clicks and impressions that you guys can get for them, but how that is going to affect their bottom line and revenue? Is that what you talk about, or do you stick to the purely SEO terminology?
Yeah, we try to mix in both. We're always trying to bring in the idea or the recommendation of how this can impact things like clicks, CTR, revenue. If if it's especially if it's like we work with a lot of e-commerce brands, a lot of e-retail brands, so apparel and fashion and things like that. We're products. We work with a lot of products, physical products versus like a SaaS company. So it is a lot about like how we can drive that visibility, potentially improve that CTR, use potentially and possible and maybe a lot because it's SEO, but also trying to tie it back into revenue as much as possible, and also trying to tie it into how we play within those other channels. So, with Jellyfish, and the same thing when I was back at iCrossing too, we do, it's very big on paid search. There are agencies that have a lot of paid search clients and paid search teams. So it's within our best interests as SEOs to work well within those teams and show a new potential client, how do we work, not just literally how we work with those teams, but how SEO, paid search, paid social, content, all of that works together. So making it, every company now has sort of like has this thing. It's like, oh, it's one search or whatever. Like that's what we call it at Jellyfish, is one search. There's always some sort of like branding of like the overall full search experience, the package you're going to get. But I think that's super important because we can only do so much in SEO. Paid search can only do so much. Content can write all the content they want. They might need help from SEO. Like all these things don't work as well in a vacuum as they do together. So
yeah, definitely. And we were actually at a digital PR event in Manchester here in the UK not so long ago, and a lot of the talks were all based around not having silo teams anymore.
Yeah,
and having that sort of cohesiveness. Do you have any tips or advice to maybe SEO managers or head of SEOs who are struggling to sort of get that cohesiveness in their team?
If it's all, it can be tricky, especially at the agency level. If you don't have all of that, if it's like another agency's doing paid and another agency's doing DPR, like, but I communication is key. Like as much as you can, get on the phone, get on a Zoom with those teams, make sure, your strategies aren't stepping on each other's toes, you're supporting each other. As best as you can. That's the best advice I could give. Like show the data, show where you're performing well, how you're ranking organically, where there's areas where paid can help support because you might be struggling a bit, or your organic is just too far down the page because Google's like, I'm going to throw this other stuff on the top of the page. So, it's really about that communication. Where I'm at currently at Jellyfish, I'm lucky personally where the brands I work on, we also do all the paid and a ton of the other stuff at the same agency. So it's much easier to have that communication because I just ping, so-and-so on Slack and say, hey, can you help us out here because we're struggling with branded organic because of the way the SERP is looking currently. How can we work together on this, and get on a quick chat about it. But as much as you can, that communication between the silos, between the capabilities should really be paramount. Sharing that data as much as you can, I think is important. Yeah,
definitely.
Awesome. I just going back to your career progression, moving from the SEO analyst role into a manager and then into associate SEO director. Can you take us through a little bit of your mindset shift that happened moving into leading a team and managing a team under you? And if there are any tips to someone that is looking to move into a leadership role?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying a little bit before, I think, is, when you're working with a team, when you move into like a leadership role, it's vital that you become a part of that team. Like just because you're an associate director and everyone else is a manager doesn't mean you're like above them. Like you might be better at some things, or you might have more insights, or you might just be a better presenter. I feel like that's kind of where I've gotten. I just happen to present pretty well, so they've continued to promote me. I mean, hopefully that's not just it, but I don't know. But just being a part of that team and lifting that team up. I'm very protective of the people I work with and the people I manage. I want to make sure that they're getting the best support from the company, from the clients, because those aspects are going to help them become more well-rounded employees. They're going to become more well-rounded SEOs, and they're just going to feel better. And if they're going to feel better, they're going to, you know, produce better work and be more active, you know, within the work life. And I think that's absolutely vital. I think it's also good to just, you know, really kind of cheer your team on, like support them in their growth. You know, one thing I've done in the past which helped was, again, you know, like I said, I kind of done a lot of presentations. I'm good at explaining SEO in a way that's useful for clients, and it's you know, and it's I try to be as engaging as possible, and, you know, helping your teams do that as well. If that's something they're interested in, if they want to grow their career, you know, sure, they could be masterful kind of back-end SEOs, but again, this is more from an agency standpoint, so it might be a little one-sided, but you really have to be able to know and be comfortable presenting what you're doing internally and externally, like internally to other teams who don't understand SEO, or don't, or maybe they understand the importance, but they don't fully grasp it, which is fine. If I were on another capability, I wouldn't be focusing on the ins and outs of SEO because it's not part of my tool belt or toolbox or whatever. But, you know, making sure they're comfortable doing that, and then also, obviously, if you're at an agency, to the client, because you need to be able to have that client be continually engaged, and hopefully re-sign every year or every quarter.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And in terms of the team, you are, full disclosure, allowed to hype your own team up here, but what sort of key factors do you look for when you are hiring, especially if you're looking for ideally an A player to join the team? And yeah, what sort of things stand out to you the most?
I think that's a good question. You know, people, part of it is that communication, like people who can really come off as engaging when they're talking about some of the more, even the most basic SEO items. So having, and some people are introverts, so it doesn't come easy to them. So I think it's not just like, oh, let me show you how I do this meta description and be all animated and all that. Like, it's not so much about that. It's just, there's a comfort level that people will have discussing something that they are good at or know that they're good at. You know, you can feel that. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to be, they could be speaking kind of quietly or meekly, but they will still have that in their voice. You can tell that they kind of are comfortable at least speaking about these topics. So, you know, SEO, you know, I think that's something that's important, having that little bit of like showing me that you know what you're talking about. I think that's very vital. I'm trying to think what else. I definitely feel like creativity is a big part of it. So I always kind of joke, like people with like a bachelor's of science degrees or marketing degrees work in paid search, and people with liberal arts degrees work in SEO, which is not true. But a lot of people I've worked with in SEO have liberal arts degrees, myself included. So I think having a bit of that creativity, I'm being a little biased against people with like bachelor's of science degrees, I apologize. But having that sort of creativity, a bit of personality, I think is also something that is important when you're working in SEO. You know, I'm not saying I need to know everything about your entire life, but, you know, I'm curious, what do you do outside of SEO? What have you done in the past? And the question you asked me is something I always ask people, like, what brought you to SEO? Because it's always an interesting story. People don't go to school and say, I'm going to do SEO. Like, it's not something that people do. Maybe they do nowadays, but definitely they did not do that in 2005. That's for sure.
Sorry, Shrey. But I speak to quite a lot of candidates who would sort of love to work with you guys, especially on the US side of things. Do you guys, I know you obviously work with big sort of enterprise clients, is that something you look for in somebody's previous experience, or is it just a matter of having that sort of the soft skills?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I look for experience on enterprise clients, because half the people on my team haven't worked on big enterprise clients until now. but no, I think it's a mix of soft skills and just showing, that you know what you're doing. Like, give me some. That is one thing I do like to go back. A part of the original question too is that people who can show some results of what they've done. Like, walk me through something you did. And then show me, did it improve visibility? Did it improve traffic? What have you? It could be on Mary and Joe's cookingblog.net. Like, I don't care. Like, just show me a win. Like, show me something you're proud of and talk me through it. Like, that's important. Those soft skills are soft skills because I feel like there's something that they're not always a priority. They can definitely be taught in most instances. So it's not something I think is a super not a top priority, maybe like a secondary for sure.
And one more just on that before I let Shrey go. I've sort of been recommending to candidates recently that exactly what you said, like have like another like good Google Doc that links to like results with like a SEMrush screenshot on like what you did to get that win or whatever. But I've also said maybe include like a loss or two and explain why it went wrong, like maybe like the helpful content. Would that be something you'd be curious about and seeing how they're adapting to that loss and getting it back on track again?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I might steal that because yeah, I mean, that's SEO. There's plenty of losses in SEO. Some of them are within our control. A lot of them are not within our control. That's kind of how it is. You need to be as adaptive as possible in this field. So yeah, I would absolutely recommend that. By the way, you said you've got people over there that want to work with us. Send them over. Whether it's clients or clients or teammates, we've got Jellyfish has some nice wins lately. We're gonna need some support on. But if they're clients, definitely send them my way, because then I can make myself look better within the company.
Yeah, 100%.
Just touching on what you were talking about in terms of identifying A players and seeing the passion within the candidates you're hiring for. We had a previous webinar guest, Travis Talent, from Brain Labs. He was also actually mentioning the exact same thing. He was looking for candidates that had Dragon Slayer stories, which basically he described as like, just talking about your passion and how, and just trying to see that passion behind the candidate, which I thought was really cool. In terms of the soft skills, which was something that quite actually stood out to me, was that you mentioned that can be something that's taught. Do you have any tips? Were you someone that was introverted and like had to learn the soft skills moving into the leadership?
There's people in my life who wish I was introverted. I never stop talking sometimes. No, I'm very much the opposite of that. But yeah, no, I think it's that kind of nurturing and mentoring can help bring it out. I think that, having one-on-ones with teams, getting to know their comfortability levels, seeing what they're okay with, what they're not okay with, and kind of working within that. If there's someone who is happy to present to a client, but, not be on camera, I know maybe Jellyfish might disagree with me on this, but if they want to present to a client and they don't want to be on camera, if it's a client we've had for a while, I think it's okay. I think it's fine. If it's a pitch meeting, I think they should probably be on camera. But otherwise, no. If looking at yourself in the corner of the screen is going to throw you off, then that's fine. But yeah, it's all about that kind of making them feel as comfortable as possible within their own skin, within their own limitations, and kind of nurturing that as best as I can and as best as they can. So
awesome. I guess we have time for one quick fire question, and I would like to ask about onboarding. What's sort of one key tip that you consider absolutely vital when you're onboarding new team members, I guess, into Jellyfish or any of your previous roles?
I mean, one thing we in general try to avoid, and I've always tried to avoid, is, and it can be tough at agencies, but trying to ease people in. Like, sure, some people respond well throwing them into the fire, but especially if you're at like a junior or mid-level, it might be overwhelming. You might scare people away, not so much the last few months, but over the last year, you had people, not here, thankfully, but you'd hear stories of people going to a job or accepting a job and then realizing this is not for me, and then bouncing because there were so many jobs available. So like, and that's a terrible experience for everyone involved. But trying to ease folks in as much as possible. Again, going back to like their comfort level. I think that's important to try and do. It's not always something that can be done, but if it can be, that's very important. And listening to that, you know, people who come in, they have their own experiences, their own ways of working, and they might be different, they might be better. Like working those into how the team currently works might be an improvement. So giving those, that goes back to being adaptive, like just being open to those ideas as well, I think is very important when people come on.
Awesome. I love I'm not sure if you would describe it as this, but I love the empathetic approach to leadership. I've got like such a massive vibe from that. But yeah, thank you so much, Eric, for coming on. It was such an insightful webinar, and we're sorry we put you on the hotspot a little bit, but good conversations. Yeah, we hope you have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend ahead, and we will chat to you very soon.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers, Eric.
Cool.